OSCAAR TV here at the Sunset Speedway on test day here for the OSCAAR Super Late Models and the OSCAAR Modifieds. I'm Clayton Johns alongside Spencer Lewis. And Spencer, a lot of hype here before both series, but we'll start first with the OSCAAR Super Late Models. A lot of veterans coming back into the series this year. You got Mike Bayor coming back. You got Derek Tiemersma coming back. George Wilson, a lot of these guys coming back. What's your take on all these guys coming back and what the competition will be like this year?
The OSCAAR off-season, it's really been the buzz of the whole Ontario short track scene with all these guys sort of coming back at the same time. To have Tiemersma and Clark both sort of converge back on the series at the same time, it's going to make it awfully tough for Glenn Watson to go for that 5th straight championship. I mean, I know there's a lot of tracks on the OSCAAR schedule that Glenn does run very, very well at. I mean, Mosport, Kawartha, Sunset, all he does extremely well here. But when you bring in Rob Clark back into the mix, I mean, Rob Clark won his first event at the newly reconfigured Sunset. So, I mean, it didn't take him a lot of time to sort of get right back in the swing of things. And he's coming back out with a brand new chassis. I mean, Rob Clark's going to be a problem. With Derek Tiemersma hoping to run the full season, I mean, that's going to be a real boost to the 2012 OSCAAR schedule.
At the same token, there's a lot of impressive rookies coming into this series as well. I mean, Jesse Kennedy ran a few events last year with the Super Lates, but he's obviously going to be a rookie this year. Brand new car for him. Rob Poole coming in, the old Mark Gordon car coming in, and a handful of other guys, but those guys certainly not going to make it much easier for Glenn. Jesse
Kennedy coming in, I mean, I would say he would probably be the most hyped rookie to come into the OSCAAR Super Late Models in a really long time. When you look at his pro late model credentials, 2 APC 300s, or Great Canadian Race they refer to it as now, a Maple City Tire 100, a Summer Showdown at Delaware, had a top 3 of the Autumn Colors Classic. He won the Beat the Heat 150 at Salt. I mean, he's done almost everything there is to do in a pro late model. So now that he's sort of making the jump into the supers, he's one guy that I would point to that could make a splash right off the bat.
Absolutely. And Spencer, you got any predictions for this 2012 season? Do you think Glenn will be able to win this 5th championship in a row and put him with Rob Clark as the only 2 drivers to ever win 5 championships in an OSCAAR Super Late Model?
Well, I'll put it this way. When Glenn Watson won his 4th straight championship last year, it was by the widest margin in OSCAAR history. If Glenn Watson wins his 5th straight championship this year, I predict it'll be by the smallest margin in OSCAAR history.
Absolutely, good point. Now, I'll take a look here at the OSCAAR Modified division here. Brand new series, first ever event will be in 1 week's time on May the 20th here at Sunset Speedway. But not a whole lot of people not quite sure what to expect coming in here. A lot of guys coming in that are modified veterans, but also a lot of guys that are jumping up into this series from some lower divisions. But as we said, guys coming out, the McLean's, famous family at Varney Motor Speedway, and Chris Burrows and his basically a modified entourage coming with him. What do we expect from those guys?
I think it's great that OSCAAR sort of brought some legitimacy back to the modified class, because for a while there, it really did look as though they were kind of on death's door. A lot of classes, or a lot of tracks, pardon me, weren't booking them. They weren't getting the car counts that really they were hoping for. And I'm happy that guys like Gary McLean and Chris Burrows mostly are going to be able to come and race with a sanctioning body, have races that people are going to see and respect. Because I've been saying that Gary McLean is one of the best natural wheelmen in this province for a really long time. I would look to Gary McLean as a heavy favorite coming in. I mean, if he's going to run the full tour like he's saying he is, that could be your inaugural champion right there. That 8 car is extremely fast. Absolutely, that's so true. That Gary McLean has definitely been strong over the past few years. But as we said, a lot of guys jumping up into this series or just moving around. Josh Grunt's moving up from a Thunder car at Kawartha Speedway. Tim Burke ran the Lucas Oil Sportsman Series last year. And also a handful of guys coming from different open wheel series as well. What can we kind of expect out of those guys, or where do you expect them to finish? I'm excited to see what Tim Burke's car is going to end up being like, because they sort of had it as a bit of a science project where they converted their Lucas Oil Sportsman Cup chassis right into a modified. And I mean, to be completely honest with you, I didn't even know you could do that. I mean, that's a lot of welding and moving bars around, and so I'm really interested to see how that's going to work out. Tim Burke's raced the late model at Kawartha before. He's been to Peterborough, so he's no joke. I mean, he does know his way around a lot of these tracks, and that might give him the leg up on some of these other guys that haven't done as much traveling. Tim Burke could be one to keep an eye on if his chassis experiment works out. Matt Barton, that MDB race car's #2 car, he's moving up from the Ontario Legends Series. He could be a problem. That's a very good car that he's in. It's a former Delaware Speedway. Tony Vieira had it at Delaware Speedway a couple of seasons ago, so it's not a bad chassis. He could be quick. Who else were we talking about for rookies? Josh Gruntz. Josh Gruntz bought the Autumn Colors Classic winning chassis, so Josh had some success in a Thunder car at Kawartha, hasn't done as much touring as some of these other guys, but with the credentials of that chassis alone, if he could build on that, work with it, and figure it out, he could be a problem right off the bat.
Absolutely. At the same time, there's a lot of these other guys that might be a little bit of a dark horse in there. Do you have any names that you might want to throw out, guys that might kind of sneak up on some of these veterans?
There are some guys coming from the States that I haven't heard too much about, but I've heard that they're interested in coming and running with OSCAAR, so I mean, that could be really interesting. You've got guys coming from Delaware. I don't know how convinced they are or how committed they are to running the entire season, but when you get guys like Barry Newman or John Saunders out, I mean, if they're coming and running with this OSCAAR Modified Tour, they are some of the best modified racers, period, in Ontario. And if you see them come down and run some of these eastern tracks, like Sunset, like Kawartha, like Peterborough, you could certainly see them go to the front in an awful hurry. I mean, a lot of really good guys coming in OSCAAR. We just heard last week that Steve Smith has bought a chassis, a former John Saunders car, so he'll be out racing with the OSCAAR Modifieds this season. So a lot of talent. That first race, I think, is going to be quite possibly the most interesting on the entire schedule because you really don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, a lot of fans coming in, not really sure what to expect, but just know that the hype is absolutely really high for this. But as you said, do you have a prediction for a championship? I know you mentioned Gary McLean earlier. Is he your favorite choice here?
As of right now, I mean, it's only testing day. We only have about 6 or 7 cars here, but I would put a lot of eggs in that basket. Gary McLean is very, very good. He's won some big races in the past, and that's a fairly new chassis. It was new in 2011. So, providing nothing happens to him, I would go with Gary McLean in the 8 car as your inaugural OSCAAR Modified champion.
All right, and just one quick thought here to touch on. A lot of fans in the OSCAAR series around Ontario know about the OSCAAR Super Late models and think that they're such a unique class here in Ontario. But a lot of fans don't know that south of the border, there's a number of tracks that do race these Outlaw Super Late models. Coming to mind are Kalamazoo Speedway and Berlin Speedway, primarily in the northern part of Michigan. Do you think there's any chance or any possibility you could ever get any of those guys up here into an OSCAAR race or vice versa and maybe create kind of a Battle of the Border type series?
It would be so interesting if we could do, cross-promote a show with the main event tour, with the ARCA Gold Cup. But there's sort of a conflict between the tracks within that area even on, what sort of body rules to go with or how to limit the motor and weight rules. And so you'll see the western side of Michigan and the eastern side of Michigan have completely different rules. If they could sort of settle that amongst themselves and bring their cars closer together on a statewide basis, I think you'd be in a lot better position to sort of start a cross-border, cross-promotional type series event. So I mean, if it could happen, I think it could do huge numbers. I think there's a lot of fans that would sort of flock to a border track like London or Auto City or Toledo that's close to sort of both home bases. It could be very interesting, but honestly, I still think we're quite a ways off from having that happen.
All right, the first ever event for the OSCAAR Modified Tour will be in 1 week's time here at the Sunset Speedway. The OSCAAR Super Late Models will kick their season off at the same time. 6 o'clock, racing starts here at Sunset Speedway, and thanks a lot for joining us here today, Spencer.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks a lot. OSCAAR TV signing off for this day, May the 13th at Sunset Speedway.